and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we have a couple of announcements. Our next service brigade is this Sunday. I want to remind everybody, normally it's the, you hear me? Our next service brigade is this Sunday. I just wanted to remind everybody that it's normally the fourth Sunday of the month, but this month, because of our holiday, we moved it out 1 week, so it'll be this Sunday. Our featured speaker is Mr. Bill Sedan, he's an ex-Marine and trained in anti-terrorist specialist, and was speaking on terrorist camps here in Herzenberg, PA. I'm sure you're all aware of that, Hancock, New York, and how to recognize and prepare for a terrorist attack, and how to react and to minimize the destructive nature of terrorists. Just wanted to mention that our brigade is growing, but we need your help, and just hope you guys can show up and we can make this thing grow even quicker. As you all know, the tyranny that we're all facing is growing. Just had a conversation jump. Things are getting rough, and we need everybody's input and help. So we'll see you this Sunday, and we'll continue to make this thing grow.
Thank you, Kevin. Next.
Linda Bradford, our membership chairman. First of all, I'm going to tell you, I got the cast off. And I just wanted to tell a couple of these men in the audience that were upset that I got so much pampering. It has subsided substantially. He no longer puts my socks on. He doesn't button my buttons. He doesn't drive me around anywhere. But he does make breakfast for me every now and then. A lot. And one of his specialties is frozen toast. Did you ever hear of frozen toast? I know you can't buy it in the supermarkets. You got to make it yourself. But it's really great. You just pull it out of the freezer and pop it in the toaster. It's great. All kidding aside, he does make great poached eggs. And no vinegar in the water. Perfect poached eggs. But we have chickens, so they're very fresh. Okay? Okay. Back to business. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I know a lot of people could be working in your yards and doing all the cleanup and everything because the weather's so nice, or sitting in front of the TV, but you chose to come out here tonight. We really appreciate it. We want just to extend our great felt hearty thanks for coming out. We appreciate it very much. Okay, I have some announcements today. And they are in chronological order. That's first comes, you know what comes. Monday. Well, this is after the sheriff meeting. I guess that's Sunday, right? Okay. Monday is Eyes on Pennsylvania. It's 6 to 8. Their topic is who really owns the land? Federal versus state and private ownership. This is really a hot topic right now because of what's happening out in the western states. So you might want to make sure you get there and get the latest information on that. It's held at Wegmans Restaurant. Okay, next Thursday, May 22nd, Berks Tea Party, 6:30 to 8. It's going to be an open discussion and an update on the Bill 76. And that's at the Deluxe Restaurant on Lancaster Avenue, okay? And now I just found out there's really interesting. June 4th, Michelle Malkin. Everybody knows who Michelle Malkin is. She's going to be in Harrisburg at the state capitol, 12:30 to 2:30. I have additional information down at the table. And also now the Constitution class is starting up, presented by Carol Vardecki. She couldn't be here today. The very first class starts Wednesday, June 4th at 6 p.m. And the same class is also Monday, June 7th at 3 and 6. The name of the class is Making of America. I have a sign-up sheet in the back, and the book costs $17. That's this big one here, $17 for that one. And that includes the class. And there's a few books left over from the last class, the 5,000 year leap. They are $7 if anybody wants them. I have a few back there. Okay, now, these classes are held 3 times each month, the same class, so in case you can't make one, you have 2 other opportunities to hear the class. And they are very informative, and they contain very useful and valuable information, so sign up now back at my table. They're held at Wegmans Restaurant also. Okay, then June 11th, Wednesday, we have Dean Klopp's meeting, Campaign for Liberty, held in Bethel, 7 to 9. The June meeting will have attorney Joshua Prince, who is a Second Amendment attorney. Very, very interesting. I heard him twice, and he's very, very interesting. And he'll have question and answer session too, so make sure you show up for that too. And then there is Tuesday, June 17th, Lebanon 912 meeting, 6:30 to 9. It's not finalized yet, but they're considering the subject of nullification with the speaker, Bill Ryle. Is Bill here tonight? I don't see it. Okay. Nullification. Okay. If you need any additional information, I have some more information at the back table. Okay. Folks, our speaker committee has worked so hard to get you great speakers for our meetings. And next month is no exception, June 19th. We are having another debate between the Citizens for Self-Governance versus the John Berks Society. The topic is Convention of States, also known as Article 5 of our U.S. Constitution. There are 2 ways to amend our Constitution. Article 5 is one of them. They will be debating the pros and the cons of the possibility of having a Convention of States to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Folks, should this convention happen, this will be an extraordinary and monumental event. You do not want to miss this very important meeting next month. We have June flyers back at my table. Please pick up a few on your way out, pass them out to your friends, your neighbors, your co-workers, hang them in your pizza places that you go to, and get the word out. We need everybody to hear about these. Thank you very much.
That's kind of funny, Linda. We had the 2 minutes. Okay, folks, your legislative committee met again this week.
It's another one. What I've noticed in forming Pennsylvania's union reform is how the English language has been stolen. We use words like collective bargaining. That's not what it is. It's called compulsory union representation. You don't have a choice. To me, right to work is nothing more than a baby step. It doesn't solve the problem of being told in a workplace you're forced to be represented by a union when you don't want to be. Why can't we have freedom of choice over representation? Why can't we say to every individual, you will have the right in law to contract your talents, your skills directly, if you so choose? Why can't we have that law? You know why? The power of unions, particularly public sector unions. Private sector unions, they seem to be doing a very nice job of killing themselves. Public sector unions are just killing all of us. So our mission at Pennsylvania Union Reform, please take a flyer at the back, is to deal with their power through all kinds of legislative reforms, which hopefully we'll be able to talk about as the evening progresses. Am I on to
Excuse me, yeah, I didn't give you guys the rules because I was multitasking. Yellow balloon, smiley face is the warning sign. You have, we'll have like 30 seconds left, and then the red balloon will mean you're done. So right now,
I'm done.
we'll have 30 seconds left.
30 seconds. What can I say in 30 seconds to upset Steve? Join our organization, yes, thank you very much. I think that's all I want to say for now. I look forward to the debate. Thank you all for coming out.
You can tell that Simon's English, but what you don't know is I was actually born in the north of England, which is why this is taught. Oh, never mind. I left there when I was 11, so I lost the accent. So I work for the Keystone Research Center. We were founded in the middle of the 1990s out of concern about the erosion of the American and Pennsylvania middle class. We were founded and we're concerned about certain core American values that we think are threatened. Values like widespread opportunity. I idea that anybody in this country, no matter the circumstances of their birth, can become anything. The idea that democracy, by and for the people. This is the birthplace of democracy, splitting from a monarchy to make that possible. This is the place that, where people believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to support your family. And so we think that those core American values are threatened. And they're threatened by a couple of broad factors. One is economic inequality. So because of economic inequality, every single year in Pennsylvania, $50 billion a year is transferred to the top 1% because of the increase in the gap since the 1970s. Core values of opportunity and democracy also threatened because of public policies that respond to the wealthy and to corporate interests and the 1%. So these policies are so based on a political philosophy that Simon espouses that sounds good: free markets, free trade, union opposition, shrink government. But in the end, these policies end up furthering the growth of inequality and the erosion of our democracy and replacement by plutocracy. So if you care about these values, it's really important that Simon lose this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I don't understand that expression. And when I hear Steve, by the way, just talk, I'm going to do a very quick rebuttal, talk about economic inequality. You know what that sounds like to me? It sounds like what my kids say. I've got 3 young kids, 16, 13, and 11. The youngest one is always saying to me, "Dad, that's not fair." You know what I tell her? Life's not fair, so suck it up and get used to it. I first started saying that when she was 3, my wife was like, you really shouldn't, you need to tone it down slightly. But listen, you know, if you want to run around and go to the government to try to make life fair, that's a never-ending task. That language is used to coerce people into saying, well, for the common good, we need to take away individual freedoms. That's what that language is. Right to work says what? If you choose not to be a union member, if that's your choice, you are going to be forced, as a condition of your employment, into paying dues to that union. Forced, when you choose not to belong. How many people know the answer to this question? Give me liberty or give me death? Hands up. If you know the answer. Give me liberty or give me death? Well, I'm going to give you a lesson here. Patrick Henry. You know how I know that? That's a question on the United States citizenship exam. You have to pass the exam in order to qualify legally to be an American citizen. You have to know the answer to that. You don't get told when you're learning about the Constitution and the founding of this country, pay a union or you can't work here. That sounds like the mafia to me. So when we talk about right to work, we are talking about restoring something fundamental to each and every individual, the right to self-determination. If Steve wants to tell you unions are good, God bless him. Let him sell that all over the state. And if people want to join, and if people want to pay dues, they have that right. But what right is it when we have a government that says if you object, you're going to be forced because it's for the common good? You know, our human history is replete with examples of individuals and organizations who would grow their worth on the back of someone else's liberty. And it has never been right. The founding idea behind right to work says, if you choose not to be a union member, it's because you made the decision, they don't benefit you, therefore you don't owe them any dues. And if the unions don't like that, then we'll have the second part of the debate, which is to eliminate their compulsory representation rights, because that's just as bad as compulsory union dues. You can never justify taking away an individual's freedom in the name of the common good. Ever. It's un-American. Thank you.
Thank you. Less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, here we go. So, okay. So let's go back to the life's not fair analogy. Simon wants you to believe a very simple story about life's not fair, the economy delivers whatever level of inequality or equity it delivers. We can't do anything about that. That's silly. People who follow sports know that you can change the rules. Every single sport has like a competition committee. Basketball, that's what it's called. So they decide, let's create the 3-second line so that we open up the game. Let's stop people from putting their hand in the small of the bag of the person who's dribbling. Let's change the rules. In football now, let's worry about people like getting concussions and early brain injuries. So we keep changing sports to make them more attractive to watch, more fluid, so that they can make more money from TV and from selling tickets. So that's what we should do in our economy. Simon wants to have a set of rules that basically give the middle class a concussion. And so for 30-some years, we've been passing policies that lower the minimum wage, that open up to trade with very low-wage countries with no rules, that make it harder to form unions, and they're all getting the middle class ahead of it. So he wants more of the same to increase the inequality, and if we can also make politics more responsive to the corporations and the rich, he'd probably like that too. Again, that's a recipe for undermining those core American values that I talked about. He wants to get into the weeds of how you form unions and union dues collection. Here's the fundamental issue. Is it too easy or too hard for working people in America to form unions? It's too hard. It's much harder than other countries. We are virtually alone in how much we allow employers to interfere in union elections and to coerce people, intimidate people into not exercising their fundamental freedom to associate, to organize, and to bargain collectively. So we need to make it easier to form unions, the working people to get the strength, the voice in the economy and on the job that they need. That will begin to address inequality. Talk about leveling the playing field. He thinks unions, public sector unions in particular, have too much power. 15 to 1. That's how much business interests outweigh labor interests in terms of political giving and in terms of lobbyists. Roughly 15 to 1. Public sector unions are the one place left where unions have a certain amount of clout. Simon wants to get rid of that clout. Who will then fight for your Social Security? Who will then fight for your Medicaid? Who will then fight for a higher minimum wage? Nobody.
Thank you. Simon, you have a 1 minute.
Address the subject. The subject was called right to work. What is right to work? Right to work says if you choose not to belong to a union, you will not have to pay any union dues. And he wants to argue against that? Excuse me? How can you justify? He's waffling all over the place for everything else other than the issue. The issue is simple. If you choose to join a union, God bless you. Pay the dues if that's what you want. I mean, if Steve wants to, let him. Let anybody. But no one should be forced into it. He doesn't want to deal with the issue, which is the violation of individual liberty. The right to self-determination is a fundamental American right. And he wants to take away that right in the name of the common good. Forget it.
I address the fundamental issue, which is whether workers have strong enough rights to organize or not, and they don't. I don't want to go into those weeds. In my 1 minute, here, if you draw a map of the United States and draw the right-to-work states, and then this summer there was a big study that came out on upward mobility in the United States, dividing the U.S. into 700 different regions. And then you look at the places in the U.S. which have the lowest amount of upward mobility. So if you're born poor, you're stuck there. Your chances if you're born in the bottom fifth to make it the top fifth are about 4 in 100. Versus in Pennsylvania, by and large, it's 1 in 10. Some parts of Pennsylvania, like rural, north central Pennsylvania, St. Mary's, you've actually got a 1 in 8 chance of making it to the top fifth if you start at the bottom fifth. That's awesome. So the places with the least upward mobility are the places where you have right to work laws. It's all part of the same basic strategy. Shrink government, weaken unions, deregulate the economy, and what you're going to get is a situation where you don't have a responsive democracy, you don't have an American dream, That's the practical consequence of what Simon's talking about.
Thank you.
All questions, we disagree on this, we'll see. So again, trade and manufacturing policy. Again, part of my broader argument is that our political policies are too responsive to corporations and the 1%. One area that illustrates that fundamental problem is our policy when it comes to trade. If you look back to since the 1970s, particularly in Pennsylvania, we have had a steady loss of middle-class manufacturing jobs. We've also had policies in Washington, D.C. on trade that basically greased the skids for the loss of those manufacturing jobs. Trade deals like the North American Free Trade Agreement, trade deal with China in the late 1990s, other trade deals. When you look at the details of those trade rules, what they don't do is protect in any way U.S. manufacturing base, U.S. manufacturing workers. What they do, those trade deals, is they protect the intellectual property rights of big U.S. corporations. And they also protect the investments of U.S. corporations against sort of expropriation or being taken by foreign governments. So the details of those trade deals reflect the political power that influenced those trade deals. When they were negotiated, companies like GM, Ford, Chrysler, General Electric, big multinational U.S. corporations, wanted trade deals that let them invest and produce, often for the U.S. market, wherever the heck they wanted, with as little restraint as possible. So again, that's an illustration of policies that are responding to folks with deep pockets and that are very much at odds with the interests of, for example, Berks County, which was historically a very, very strong manufacturing county. So we need to fix our democracy in part if we're going to get different policies on trade and manufacturing that can help rebuild manufacturing, right, what people now call the reshoring wave. Again, other countries have policies that are much more responsive to their domestic manufacturing and their domestic manufacturing jobs. Often that's because their unions are more powerful that are based in manufacturing than our unions are. So again, going forward, to change trade and manufacturing policies, we need actually different alliances that are left-right, because there are concerns about the loss of manufacturing jobs that cross the political spectrum. And we actually also need business labor political alliances, because some of the U.S. manufacturing companies are becoming more aware that globalization of manufacturing isn't working out so well for them either. So I think there is some hope that we'll get better trade and manufacturing policies in the years ahead.
Very quick rebuttal. I love hearing Steve talk about freedom being a weed. The details of things like freedom. Okay. Trade policy. I find it interesting that Steve talks about, I'm not going to get into the details of any particular free trade agreement, but when he's talking about GM and these other places, of course the fact that they went kind of belly up had nothing to do, did it, with the unbelievable power of the unions. I mean, really, the pensions that built up the liabilities? Oh my Lord. Sure, who ends up bailing them out? We do. We do, because the ridiculous level of labor costs that were built into that structure over the years. I mean, if you want, look, I love free, America is what? America competes, don't we do that? Are we afraid of competition in any area of life, sports, business, or any other? No. The way that you have, Steve talks about policy, is if the government can somehow do something to create jobs. It's businesses that create jobs, and businesses create jobs when they make an attractive product that consumers want to purchase at an attractive price. As a consumer, I'm going to go and shop around for the best deal I can get, the best product I can get. I'm not going to be shopping around going, who's got the best union? No. Okay? If your car costs too much money because your labor costs are too high, that's your problem. I'm buying my car over here. And that's how the world works. But what Steve wants to do, and I go back to this thing, well, let's have government make it fair. Let's have them not be able to build cars cheaper than ours. Let's keep all of those artificial labour costs in GM and Chrysler to Lego bus, because, Barack Obama will bail it all out in the end anyway. You can't, the whole principle of free enterprise is freedom and competition. And Steve wants to have the government curb that. That's not good.
Thank you. One,
A bit of a one-trick pony, you know, whose fault is it? It's the union's fault. The other high-wage countries that have much stronger manufacturing sectors tend to have much higher levels of unionization than we do. They actually by now have much higher wages in manufacturing than we do. And they have different policies that, yes, are partly a result of government. So again, Simon's trying to lure you back into this. Government can't do anything. Competition is one thing. Let's let competition rip away. That is a misconception. Competition is not an all or nothing thing. As any schoolboy who watches basketball knows, you can use government policy together with the power of the market to shape the outcomes you can. We want to compete based on high wages, high productivity, innovation. And so you actually need to invest in education, you need to invest in infrastructure, you need to do things together through government investments and through smart rules to stop companies from competing along the low road, because they can do that in Mexico and China. They're not going to do that with U.S. workers. So again, his simplistic view of competition is at the root of his inability to come up with a policy
Thank you very much.
that would protect the U.S. middle class.
Simon, you have 1 minute if you'd like to go.
1 minute, okay. Kingdom in the 1970s, witnessing the government literally control practically all aspects of the private economy, which is what we're talking about. And it was a disaster. And that's the path that Steve wants to go down. More government control, more government regulation. Now, within reason, you can have some degree of government regulation, but more than anything, it is about competition. When you lower the entrance cost of business, you're going to have more people wanting to set up business. What Steve wants to do is bring in all of these rules and costs on business because he thinks business is bad. You know, business are these evil, greedy people. No, they're called people who create jobs. Okay? Name one union that's ever created a job other than for a union boss. Doesn't exist. It is businesses, and yes, those corporations who create jobs. We should never forget.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next topic will be one of Simon's. Ending.
Everybody thought right to work was the be-all and end-all. Right to work says, if you're not in the union, you don't pay any union dues, right? But when you still join a unionized workplace, you're still required to be represented by the union, which is why people like Steve come along with his reads and say things like, well, if you don't join, you still benefit from us, so you have to pay your fair share, right? I love that. You don't belong to the union, you want nothing to do with them, but you have to pay your fair share. Why don't we have a law that says no union shall be allowed to represent anybody except its voluntary members, right? How simple is that? Why should a union be allowed in law to represent people who do not want its representation? Now, if you want the union's representation, fine, form the union, join, pay the dues. But what if you want to contract your services directly with your employer? You're not allowed. You're not allowed. So if I want to go to a school district, and I'm a really talented math teacher, and I know that that school district's in short supply, why can't I go and contract my services directly with our employer? Why can't I talk directly? Why do I need a middleman? I don't want the union if I choose not to have one. We talk about merit-based pay. I get fed up of hearing about all these ideas coming from Washington or Harrisburg about merit-based pay. You know how you get merit-based pay in our school districts? You let Sally Smith, the individual teacher, talk to her employer directly. They'll figure it out, won't they? Why do we need the government involved in that conversation? Let Sally talk to her principal and her employer. They'll figure out whatever demographics, whatever metrics that they agree with themselves. That individual contract can then be finalized between the two of them. When you bring in a third party, a monopoly bargaining agent, that's what they are, monopoly, and say we're going to force our representation onto all of you, you strip away the right of an individual to contract their talents. This isn't just about dues. This is about saying every individual should have the right to choose their own representation. Unions should not be given the power of government, the power to represent everybody. We elect government. We elect one president. He represents all of us even if we have voted against him. What Steve wants is to give unions the same power as government, the power to represent people who voted against them, who are not their members, and then force people to pay them. That's wrong. We talk about collective bargaining, let's call it what it is. Compulsory union representation. It needs to be eliminated. Unions should be told you have a right to exist, but you only have right to represent those people who are your members. And if someone doesn't want to join, they do not have to join, they do not have to pay dues. Leave them the hell alone, let them contract their services directly if they so please.
Thank you.
So again, what's the fundamental issue here is whether or not workers' rights to form a union, to organize, are too strong or too weak in the United States. Part of that debate is so-called right to work and fair share dues payments. But part of that debate is also the scope that employers have to intimidate workers and deny them union representation when they actually want it. So one place you can go to get a sense of what's more important, people being forced into unions they don't want to belong to, or people not getting some kind of union or worker voice that they do want, is a survey, a random sample survey. And what that shows overwhelmingly, Richard Freeman of Harvard and Joy Rogers of the University of Wisconsin, is that workers, tiny numbers of workers are unionized when they don't want to be, and very large numbers of non-union workers would like some kind of stronger worker voice. So again, the fundamental problem in this country is, according to estimates, for example, by Paul Weiler, a probably by now retired Harvard Law School professor, is that 1 out of 3 leaders of union organizing campaigns in the United States is fired for union activity, even though that's illegal. Now, how can companies get away with that? Are there sanctions? No, the sanctions are meaningless. The sanctions are, if you get reinstated, like years later, you get back pay minus what you should have earned by getting another job. So again, when you go into the details, what you find is that if you're a supermarket worker, or a factory worker, or a nursing home worker, or a secretary, or a food service worker in school, less in the public sector because employers are less hostile somewhat in the public sector. But what you find is that workers who really do want a better life, a higher wage, a union, get intimidated out of not getting a union. That's the fundamental labor rights problem in this country. That's why union density is going down in the private sector. That's why inequality is growing up, and why the 99% in Pennsylvania transfers $50 billion, sort of roughly $12,500 per family every single year, to the top 1%. Because of the growth of inequality since the 1970s, which is absolutely connected tightly to the decline of unions and the hostility of American law and court interpretations to workers' fundamental freedom to organize.
Thank you very much. Simon, you have a 1-minute rebuttal.
Back to what I said at the beginning. Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. What did he not say? Give me a union boss to control my life. Really? Now, Steve is trying to... Have you heard me say that unions should not exist? No. Have you heard me say that people should not be allowed to join and form a union? No. What you've heard me say is if you wish to do so, of course you should have that right. Of course. But if you choose not to, why are you forced into being represented by an entity that you want nothing to do with? He can't answer the question. Everything he says comes back to, it's for the common good, to take away someone else's freedom. It's never for the common good, ever. You can never justify stripping away any American's right to self-determination.
No, actually what I said is the much more fundamental threat to freedom in America is the violation of workers' freedom to organize in the private sector, which is also what Human Rights Watch determined in a study that held up U.S. law and practice against international labor rights and standards. So I didn't hear Simon talk about that. I didn't hear him talk about the fact that union elections in the private sector are like Soviet elections, because the employers have the ability to shape the outcome, just like Vladimir Putin, by having one-on-one meetings between workers and supervisors, by saying they're going to close the plant even though it's illegal, by firing the union leaders. Again, the erosion of industrial democracy or worker rights in the American private sector is a much more fundamental threat to freedom in this country and ultimately to our democracy, because the importance of unions as a voice of middle-class families in our democracy. Simon needs to look at the numbers, look at what's important, get out of his own weeds, which are not a significant issue.
Thank you. The last scheduled specific topic is by Mr. Herzenberg, and that is the war on the middle class. You have 3 minutes.
So again, this allows me to come back to my themes. Pundits and think tank folks can be redundant. Sorry for that. The war on the middle class is kind of evident in the numbers. So again, the rise in the share of the top 1% share of income from sort of 8% in the 1970s in Pennsylvania to sort of around 20%. And as soon as we get the new numbers, I'm fairly confident based on national trends of 23%. In this recovery since 2009 across the country, 95% of the increase in the economic pie in this country since 2009 has gone to the top 1%. If you look at charts across countries since the 1980s, you look at the bottom end of the income distribution, people at the 10th percentile, people in the middle at the 50th percentile, people at the top. And you break it down into 10 pieces. In 1980, the U.S. was the richest country in the world across the spectrum, the bottom, in the middle, at the top. Every few years, you see a few more countries, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, France. You see more and more countries, their bottom 10% is richer than ours, their bottom 20%, their bottom 30%, their bottom 40%. Now, their middle is richer than ours. So, what's high enough for Simon? I mean, if we can get rid of public sector unions or weaken them, doing what he wants in terms of the right to work or public sector dues collection, making less influential politics, but we won't increase that minimum wage. Great. Maybe we can repeal the Affordable Care Act and get lots more people back with no health care. Maybe we can attack Social Security and get rid of retirement for the middle class. Can't that be awful? Yeah!
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate your passion. Simon, you have 3 minutes.
He's finally coming out of his shell. He's been waiting for this all night. I don't know how to respond to some of that. I really don't. I'm just like, what? Okay, so the answer is we need more government to level the playing field? Oh, okay, good, thanks. What am I supposed to respond to? War on the middle class. By the way, when I was growing up in England, always, the unions like, who represents the working class? I mean, out of the unions work for the middle class. Apparently in the union world, the working class doesn't exist anymore. Maybe they need unions, not the middle class. I'm sorry, I'm being politically incorrect. But, what was I going to say? Yeah, I love teaching my kids how to be a 1%er, really. I just tell them, you know, when they come to me with all their crying and carrying on, well, why don't you try and be a 1%er like, let's say, King Wendell Young IV, the head of the State Liquor Store Union. He makes, what, $290,000 a year? That's nice, isn't it, really? And I still can't buy my booze in the supermarket. Isn't that wonderful? Public sector unions, he talks about, like, they're what? They're advocating for minimum wage and all this stuff. Are you kidding me? Have you seen the pension deal that's going on? How many billions of dollars in the whole week? 47 billion? They want guaranteed pensions till the day they die. Does anyone else get that? The private sector? But we have to guarantee the pensions of people who work for government. We have to deal with stock market uncertainty, but not if you work for the government. But that's good for all of us if you listen to Steve, right? We can impose higher taxes, higher costs for government in order to make sure that if you work for the government, you don't ever have to worry about your retirement because you'll get a guaranteed payout till the day you die because some sucker will make sure that you do. The sucker being all of us. Because that's what the public sector unions are all about. I mean, you know, I have less of a gripe. I realize I have less of a gripe with private sector unions. Let them do what they want to do. It doesn't involve my money. You talk about government unions, you talk about the teachers union, kicking children out of school on strikes. Are you kidding me? How about we have a law that says if you throw an innocent child out of school on a strike, you're fired? How about that? The unions are so good at controlling the debate, saying it's, oh, we need life to be fair. We're financing every dollar that goes into what public sector unions want. We are. Not the private sector. Well, we are the private sector, but you understand my point. Government unions are funded by all of us. All of their demands are funded by all of us. All they do is want more money. That means more taxes. That's fair. Yeah. On them, not us.
Thank you. You have 1 minute rebuttal, Steve?
Okay. Again, Simon is very good at diversion politics. $47 billion pension debt sounds like a lot of money. I've already told you that every single year, the transfer to the top 1%, every single year, is worth more than the total public sector pension debt, which those folks earn. They didn't skim on their contributions. So much bigger issue is inequality. Public pension issue is a tiny issue by comparison to the growth of inequality. Wendell Young, a union leader, makes $290,000 a year. Again, Hershey's CEO a couple years ago made more than $10 million at the same time that they were using foreign students on so-called foreign exchange visas to work in one of their contractors. Here's the reason. Back to the war on the middle class. The war on the middle class is connected to a political system that's too responsive to the 1% and to the kind of folks that support Simon's organization. And the erosion of unions is also connected to the growth of inequality and the weakening of the middle class and its voice in politics. Again, this is back to this vicious circle in terms of economic inequality and inequality in political influence that's rooted in wealth and income gaps. So Simon's favorite policies, certainly around unions, would make the problem fundamentally worse, thereby endangering those three core American values that I started with.
Thank Simon. I believe you have 1 minute to rebuttal.
So, as I understand it, public sector unions are good and they're all funded with public money. So the way that we make life fairer is that we all pay more. Right? I'm just lost on this. Like in the private sector, they generate wealth. That $10 million, that was because wealth was generated, jobs were created. Governments don't create wealth. They don't do anything except take money and provide government services. So why are we being told that they're good? No, they're bad. Bad. It was Franklin Roosevelt that warned against government unions. Warned. Nobody should be allowed, if you work as a public employee, providing an essential government service, whether you're a toll worker, a county worker, or a school teacher, you're providing an essential government service. Nobody should be allowed to organize against the public who pays them. The right to say, if you don't give me more money, if you're a teacher, if you don't give me more, I'm kicking your kid out of school until you pay higher taxes. That's called blackmail. That's what it is. Government unions are in the business, legalized business of blackmail. And Steve wants to say they're good for us. Are you kidding me? When that pension bill comes due and we're paying, 30% higher property taxes? Well, I'll be sure to thank the government unions for that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, I had asked for 2 minutes tonight, and you'll get time to answer and time for rebuttal to that. So, Simon.
I don't know I'm interested in knowing what Simon's prescription, whether for economic inequality is, and whether he's concerned about the unequal political influence of folks with lots of money in a society where the concentration of wealth and income are growing. And maybe he's not.
The question is the influence of money. Well, let's face it. I mean, there's all kinds of money flowing around politics from everywhere, isn't there? I mean, unless you want to start trying to pass laws that would probably be unconstitutional under the First Amendment, I don't know what you want to do about that. The fact of the matter is I have a huge problem. One of our legislative issues when it comes to money is what you heard about earlier, this idea that the government unions are getting their political money deducted at source through paychecks. I don't understand why that bill is even being called paycheck protection. It has nothing to do with that. I'm testifying on that bill actually in a couple of weeks in Harrisburg. I think they should rename it. Just call it the collect your own bloody money bill. That's what it is. Why should Wendell Young have a right to collect political campaign contributions using government resources? No other political committee does. Yet the government unions have a special right to collect it that way. It's ridiculous. We're in the business of allowing government resources to influence elections. And Tom Corbett just as guilty because he signed a contract with King Glen the year before. Thrown both in jail.
Okay, you want to reply to that, Mr. Herzenberg?
I only to observe that, and perhaps my question wasn't that articulate, but I really asked you what you do about the growth of inequality as well as its intersection with inequalities of political influence that are rooted in money. So you gave your standard answer to a portion of the second issue, but again, the money in politics, the numbers are 15-1. The number of business lobbyists, the labor lobbyists, and nonprofit lobbyists. The number of political giving, the best estimates are 15-1 business interests. So again, if you're me, and I kind of laid out why I think economic inequality and inequality of political influence do endanger what I think are core American values. I think equality of opportunity and widespread opportunity, responsive democracy, the idea that people work hard and play the rules, play by the rules, can support their family. I think those are core American values, and there are these two, again, broad trends in the economy and in politics that are going on and undercutting those values. And I really want to know whether you have whether you think there's anything that can be done about those, or it's kind of like your speech to your girl where life is unfair and okay, so economic inequality, our democracy is going down the tubes. Who cares?
I'm going to step in here. Simon, do you have a short reply to that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking a legal question. Can money be stopped in politics? Probably not under the First Amendment. So I don't know what you want me to do about it. I mean, the fact of the matter is it flows in all directions on all sides. A lot of it's funneled through various different groups and entities that don't really report the way that they should. So that's life. I mean, what do you want to do? Like, you want to start passing government laws saying you make too much money, I'm going to take it from you? Get out of here. Let the shareholders decide that. Let the consumers decide that. You can't have people coming along from government and saying you are bad because you make too much. You must have not earned it or something. I mean, no. How about how many jobs were created? What Steve wants to do is have government make life fair. It will never be fair. If that was the answer, then it would be incredibly fair under Lenin and Stalin. It wasn't.
So again, what Simon is ignoring is there's lots of variation in policy across the rich countries. And so a lot of other countries have much higher minimum wages, much stronger union movements. They take the terms of collective bargaining agreements and they extend them across even the non-union employers in the industry. So there are lots of practical, in existence ways to reduce economic inequality. So they're perfectly compatible with strong market economies.
Thank you. A question that was brought to me before at the beginning of tonight was, is this a full-time job for each of you, and where does your funding come from?
I got accused of being part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. No, this is actually something, this is a labor of love for me. I actually work for a living. I'm a volunteer with Pennsylvanians for Union Reform. We're a small non-profit. You are welcome to financially support us. We hope you do. I was only kidding about garnishing your wages. So this is not my job. This is something I got involved with many years ago when the teachers union kicked all my kids out of school. I got the hump with it. I said this is unacceptable. Got off the couch and got involved after that. So it is a labor of love for me. I don't get funded by unions like Steve does.
We were founded by unions who were concerned about the growth of inequality. Most of our money comes from, a majority of our money comes from foundations, like the Ford Foundation and the Annie Casey Foundation. Some of our money comes from fee-for-service work because we have some pretty good data people in our shop, and so union money depends on the year. It could be 10% of our money, could be $1 in $7.
Okay, thanks. And you used the sports analogy as far as rules of the basketball. There's some cities in Pennsylvania that have their own labor laws. And the biggest city in Pennsylvania, and shrinking steadily and fast, as far as their number of large, Philadelphia is shrinking to the point that they're going to be on the top 10 maybe 5 years from now or less, they have laws that they're imposing upon corporations, different family leave acts, that the state of Pennsylvania doesn't do, but yet they're shrinking. So at some point, certain rules in basketball can strangle the game. Do you feel that can happen in labor?
Yeah, it can. Again, Philadelphia's actually rebounding the population, I think, in the last decade. They didn't pass the law you're talking about until, again, fairly recently, which is when they're increasing. So there's no conceivable way that that particular law has anything to do with Philadelphia's shrinking. Listen, labor standards vary dramatically across cities, states, Canadian provinces, countries. When you look across countries, by and large, I mean, we could spend years on this, but by and large, the countries with, the rich countries with stronger labor standards and stronger unions tend to have stronger economies. When you look across, again, U.S. states, the study I cited, and again, the Pennsylvania findings for that study from last summer done by economists from Berkeley and Harvard, is that they looked at 700 different parts of the U.S. And so the parts of the U.S., mostly in the South, which have right to work laws, which don't fund education very well, which have lower voter turnout and histories of voter suppression, the places that, again, let the market rip more rather than have labor standards like you're talking about, tend to be poorer with more inequality. So it's obviously got to be common sense, but if it was up to the folks that opposed that Philly bill, like the National Federation of Independent Business, they're making the same arguments that they were making against child labor laws, that they were making against the first health and safety laws, that they were making against the first minimum wage laws. If we listen to those folks, we might never rule out slavery. So in the end, you want labor standards that are pragmatic and that guide the market to competition based on great products and innovation, and so it's like a sport. You're not going to have rules that will work for eternity because markets change, technologies change, you get globalization, so you need to have common sense examination of what kind of rules, simple rules, not too bureaucratic, not rules that will destroy the genius of the market and the genius of competition, but rules will say you can't win by polluting more than your competition. You can't win by being super great at exploitation. You can't win by hiring 8-year-olds. So again, we've got to have that conversation in an ongoing way.
Simon, you want to reply?
You can't win by burning down a Quaker building. I mean, one question I want to ask is, Bill, you heard about this bill in Harrisburg that would, I never even knew this existed, that unions in a labor dispute were exempt from harassment, what's the other thing? Using weapons of mass destruction was written into the law. They got an exemption on stalking. You can have parties to a labor dispute exempt from that behavior. Let me ask Steve a question. I forgot, this is a good one. That legislation, which is currently floating around Harrisburg, do you support ending those exemptions?
I actually don't. I know that case, but not the details of it. But what I would say is that the routine violation of workers' rights to form a union in the U.S., the firing of people who lead organizing campaigns, and the fact that the sanctions against employers who routinely fire leaders of organizing campaigns, the fact that those are so weak, that's a real issue that has a profound effect on a long-term basis on the U.S. economy. What you're talking about is not a real issue.
It's not a real issue when union thugs are following a mother home and intimidating her and harassing her in a restaurant because they're allowed to get away with it in law. That's not an issue. When those iron workers are under federal indictment, that's not an issue. Are you kidding me? I mean, think about, employers do all these terrible things. How about those iron workers in the Quaker House? How about the mom that was harassed, stalked, threatened by union thugs able to get away with it because there's an exemption in the law that says if you call it a labor dispute, you can basically threaten and harass people. That for anyone else would be a criminal offense. Criminal. And that legislation in Harrisburg would close that loophole. And I'm just like, if you've never heard of it, Steve, like, where have you been? Like, that's been past the House, it went up to the Senate, it's now coming back to the House. If you're a think tank in Harrisburg, you know about this bill. Most of us do. So, you know, the idea that unions are sweetness and light, and they do all these lovely things, you're right. Go down to Philadelphia. Okay? Can you say the word Philadelphia without saying the word union thug? I can't. Sorry. How many people are leaving there because of that reason? Forget about it.
Okay, I'm going to open up to the audience for questions. If you have a question, I need you to stand up, say your name and the town you're from, and then state a question. Please don't tell a story. These guys are intelligent, so just state the question. They'll figure it out. Now I'll hold back. So I'll hold the mic.
My name is Paul. I'm from Berks, and my question is, if unions are so good, why is money moving from union states to non-union states where jobs are being created, they're better jobs, and at the same time, their deficits are going down?
My wife came to this, Sarah, in the back. I was supposed to tell Simon at the beginning so that he'd be a little nicer to me. But no, he's been fine. He's been fine. I'm kidding. Jobs aren't moving to Southern states. I mean, they did in the 90s to some degree, but to some degree since, in the last decade or so, since about 1998, some southern states, North Carolina, for example, have been suffering from a live by the low-wage strategy, die by the low-wage strategy. So a lot of jobs that went from the north to the south, you know, using the lower wages and the weaker union influence and the right-to-work laws, then went to Mexico and then went to China. Because so again, if you look across a lot of data, the world's a complicated place. But the places that are growing include, you know, Massachusetts, Northern California, and so there isn't a simple story. People tend to go where it's warmer. I think there's a trend like that.
We don't need a weather report.
Yeah.
I need you to answer the question.
Yeah, so I think the premise of the question is not accurate. So.
To answer the question, why is it happening, it's very, very simple. You don't need to be a think tank to know why jobs are moving there. Economic prosperity flows from individual freedom. That has always been the American way. So when we talk about right to work states, let's go back to what it is. In a right to work state, why would a union be weak? Why would they? They can still exist. They can still be formed. They just can't force people to pay them who choose not to belong. They can still exist. So when Steve talks about unions are weaker in right to work states, that's because the people who have the freedom to choose not to go join and pay. And why is that bad? Steve is trying to justify coercion, and it simply doesn't work. The answer to the question is, prosperity flows from freedom. It always has, it always will.
Yes.
My name's Lynn Burkert. I'm from New Ringgold. I'm trying to think how to put it into a question. We've tried getting a union in 3 times where I work, and not once has the management even discussed it with us. We never got threat or anything else. And as far as the business leaving here because we don't have unions, I think it has a lot more to do with government raising taxes. We used to have at least 16 different textile mills around here. Do you think maybe the government taxing them, raising taxes on them, is helping to put them out of business?
Okay, maybe as a question, do unions raise expenses for businesses just like taxes raise expenses for businesses?
It's a self-evident question, isn't it? I mean, unions exist to get more money. Therefore, when they get more money, the business has less. So, you know, it's like anything else in life. Come, you know, if you're a business, why would you not go to set up shop in a place where your costs are lower? That's natural instinct. Why would you buy a car as a consumer that's less expensive if it's the same quality as one that's more expensive? It's a fundamental premise. When your costs are higher, you move.
Thank you. I'm going to try to limit your guys' answers to 1 minute because I want to get more questions.
Again, you get what you pay for, and to some extent, and that's true for unions too. So there's lots of evidence that productivity is higher among the productivity of union workers. There's lots of evidence that, again, that the more unionized, some of the more unionized European countries, Germany, Scandinavia, like 85, 90% unionization, have very high levels of productivity because of a bunch of things, but clearly unions there they are higher cost, but they're part of a competitive strategy that is emphasizing high productivity, high quality innovation, competing along what we call the high road. So it's back to this issue of how you compete. If you're competing along the low road and high cost union workers, you're in trouble. But if you are able to use unions as part of a strategy for competing based on skill and innovation, then you can be all set.
Thank you.
Sam Rankador, Bern Township. You both mentioned about the 1%. In this country here, should we celebrate where people entering the 1%?
Yes. In a word, yes. I'm not a 1%er, but I can't stand class warfare. I can't stand this idea that if you're a successful business executive or a chieftain of a corporation which might provide thousands and thousands of jobs, that you have to be demonized. If my kids ever go up and get to work for one of these corporations where a CEO makes, $10 million a year, and my kids are earning a living wage and have a house, my kids are going to say thank you, okay, to that CEO for providing them with a job so they can get ahead in life. I mean, I'm sick and tired of hearing this idea that comes from Obama on down through this mentality of envy. Take away from someone else. Let the shareholders, let the business owners, and let the consumers set the price. If you don't like the CEO of Hershey, how much money he makes, don't buy their chocolate bars.
Thank you. 1 minute. Sorry.
Again, it depends on what the 1% is doing. So, in the 60s, a lot of the U.S. 1% are manufacturing companies that were the world's most productive. And so, but nowadays, a huge part of our 1% are in financial services. They don't make anything. They just manipulate money. A lot of them are hedge fund managers that manage to get them a sweetheart deal where their income every year is taxed at 15%, whereas regular folks, if they get well off, are taxed as high as 39%. So again, right now we got a lot of 1%ers that are gaming the system and doing unproductive. And so if we had higher tax rates at the top, actually, then gaming the system would be less attractive. So you'd actually get more tax revenue to invest in education, to lower property taxes for regular folks, and you'd actually get more innovation because people wouldn't spend as much time doing financial machinations and gaming the system.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Craig Kleisman from Hamburg, and currently, throughout the government, public employee unions are allowed in most places, most positions. I'd like to ask both gentlemen, how do you feel about allowing members of the armed forces to be part of a union?
That touches on a sensitive story I got told a few years ago. I got started on the whole teacher strike issue. And this one lady several years ago put it into perspective for me, just touching on your theme. She said, Mr. Campbell, my husband is a public employee. He considers himself to be a public servant. He has no right to strike, and he has never had a right to strike. Every night in Afghanistan, he sleeps next to a gun. Now, and then she said, the idea that you could have public servants who teach our children, who can abandon their job, and my husband's sleeping next to a gun. Forget about it. We have men and women in our armed forces prepared to sacrifice their lives who cannot strike in the name of public service. And what do we find in our schools, in other government areas? We allow them to strike, shut down the government. Can you imagine if our armed forces had that attitude? I'm not doing that. You're not paying me enough. I'm going home. I'm not working today. No, the problem that we have with government unions is that these government union bosses breed this mentality, this entitlement mentality, that they deserve more. It's an entitlement mentality that does a disservice to those in the public sector, like our armed forces, who genuinely, in their heart, believe in public service.
It's a great question. Actually, it's not what I thought about. One thing, though, the military folks are lucky about is, rightfully, military folks are held in high esteem in general in society and in our political system. So again, even before unions or without unions, the military, Civil War pensions, the military tends to get at least certain benefits that other workers who don't have a union can't get. But here's please, hello, please be respectful.
Hold on a second, let him answer.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what nerve I touched. But here's where I want to go.
What nerve?
Think that question, and again, where Simon keeps taking you, they want to say the main issue that we should be focusing on is public sector unions and whether they have rights they shouldn't have. Again, I think if you look at the broader problems of the U.S. middle class, that's a distraction. The broader problem of the U.S. middle class is the erosion of good jobs in the middle. Forget the issue of the 1% for a second. The concern is that folks in the middle aren't seeing incomes go up, don't have the retirement security they used to have, kids coming out of school now don't have the opportunities they once had. So as long as you're distracted by what is really a sideshow in terms of most jobs and most of the economy, you're going to be successfully led away from the issues that matter to most people in this room and most people in Berks County.
I keep hearing you say that you're fighting against inequality and that you want equality. And I personally have experienced that unions indeed do bring equality, but with them they also bring and breed mediocrity. So my point is, reality is that we're not equal. Some of us are awesome tennis players, some of us are not. Some of us are great opera singers, some of us are not. You get the point. So do unions fear, why do you fear inequality?
Yes, and let me, of all the unionized sectors, let me answer that question with respect to public education, because I think it is most sensitive there. The fact that we pay all of our teachers and workers the same. Everybody in this room knows when they went to school who they had great teachers. Am I not right? You knew you had great teachers, average teachers, and crappy teachers. Everybody in this room, every parent who sends their kid to school knows that. Everyone talks about it. Yet, why is it that we have to say a great teacher, an outstanding teacher, has to get paid the same as someone who's barely coasting by? That's not right. The unions bring that mediocrity to the table. They also distort, in our schools, the forces of supply and demand. There's no such, like in my school, I was talking to one of the high school principals. There's a fundamental difference in the forces of supply and demand for, say, a high school math teacher and physics teacher than a kindergarten first grade teacher. By the way, there's nothing wrong with kindergarten and first grade teachers, but there's more of a supply of them. You can fill those positions very easily. You get a vacancy for a high school math teacher, you might get 2 or 3 vacancies. What we should be having in place is allowing the forces of supply and demand to say, we will offer more money for those positions that are hard to fill to attract people to it, and we can pay less for positions that we can fill cheaper. That doesn't mean you get a lower quality kindergarten teacher. It just means you let the free market work. You allow people to contract their services that will do what? Provide better quality to our students and lower the cost to taxpayers. Unions distort the marketplace, and in public education, it damages our students and our taxpayers.
Unions bring a measure of equity, and to me, in many places, actually, strong unions the strongest members are the people who are most committed to their craft or their profession. So I don't agree that unions in general breed mediocrity. I mean, again, the construction trades, a lot of times, there's a great deal of commitment to, those folks went through a 4 or 5 year apprenticeship. They believe very much in upholding the standards of their craft. They believe that by and large they're better trained and more productive than many of their non-union competition. And so, again, you can't make sweeping generalizations. The particular form of unionism in big factories in the U.S. in the 50s and 60s, I think your critique, probably applied in some degree, right? But there are lots of other contexts where, no, unions make sure the regular folk get a fair shake, and they also make sure that employers invest in training, give people advancement opportunities, so they foster pride in work and high levels of performance.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to make 2 points. Oh, Randy Tolman of Bethel, Pennsylvania. 2 points before I ask the question. One is, in 1969, I happened to be the president of the Alton Local Carpenters, so I know about the construction industry. Most of my life I was in an independent businessman, so I know both sides of the equation. Question is this, very simple. To Simon and I'm sorry, Steve. Are you presently, either one of you, under some kind of a union contract? Part of the other part of the question is, have you ever worked under a union contract? For both of you.
No.
I was a member of the union of the U.S. Department of Labor at one point when I was an economist there right out of graduate school. My terms were not set by the contract, but I was a member too.
Okay.
Are you now? What? Are you now?
Not a member of that union now, no, I'm not.
Are you a member of a union?
No. Okay, because I'm the executive director of an 8-person think tank.
Hi, my name is Sally Grath and I'm from Mooresville. Isn't it true that anybody and everybody in this country can be part of the 1% if they work hard enough? Before you answer that, I just want to say one thing because you upset me greatly in your one statement. Here's an advantage that our military has. My daughter, who's in Kuwait for the 3rd time, her Mother's Day message to me was a phone call on my answering machine. Thank you.
Okay. So, questions for that? Yeah, well, what about?
If you work hard enough, you can become part
Oh,
of the
okay, sorry, okay, sorry. Thank you for repeating that. That's exactly the value that I share. So again, part of my concern.
How do unions promote that? I have been in union shops where people are sitting around doing nothing for 45 minutes and then say, oh, well, we might as well not go back to work now because in 10 minutes we're going to get a break.
We're going to let Mr. Herzenberg answer this question then.
Okay, but you got to listen to my, I hear you, but please listen to my answer. The data tell you that in the U.S., the places where if you're born in the bottom fifth, you have the least chance to make it up to the top are the places where unions practically don't exist in the private sector. That's what the data say. So if the data tell you that in the U.S.,